Michelle, and I'm one of the co-authors of the Asia Pacific Travel and Tourism Report, which comes to your inbox if you subscribe every last Saturday of the month, together with Gary as well. So last week, we have published our 4th monthly Asia Pacific Travel and Tourism Report. So between the three of us, we selected 15 top talking points in travel and tourism during June. Issue 4 of the report features destinations including China, Cook Islands, East Timor, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, South Korea, Thailand, and more. Hot topics range from the EU-ASEAN Aviation Agreement and digital nomadism in China to health travel pass aggregators and the world's new highest hotel. So for today's chat, we have selected 6 of these stories to discuss. So let's get started.
Yeah, so thanks very much for that, Michelle. So our first topic, well, what else could we choose? It's been the biggest story in tourism in Southeast Asia and across Asia Pacific, probably of the year, but certainly during June, it was the #1 topic because we weren't sure if it was going to happen, but eventually it happened. And that, of course, is the Phuket sandbox. So in our report this week, Jaeon, you wrote about that, and you discussed how after months of negotiations, they eventually got this up and running, and Phuket welcomed vaccinated tourists on the 1st of July. But it was a close run thing. It was only just approved right before the deadline day, right?
Yeah. So I think they kind of affected the number of visitors because TAT initially expected 1,500 people to arrive. But actually on the first day, the July 1st, only 326 people arrived. And on top of that, they kind of changed the restrictions right before they reopened. They added something for requirements for the COE system. So people were waiting longer for approval on online system. And some people got so frustrated and they canceled the whole trips. I think many people did. So there was some confusion and frustration and a little bit of anger too. But I have seen like happy pictures from tourists in Phuket on Twitter and Facebook everywhere. Some people are happy they're on a island in Thailand, eating in Thai food. Some people said the Phuket island is so empty. They felt like they're on a private island right now. So some people were happy and the authorities were celebrating, and it's a big, celebration for Southeast Asia, right? So I see that positive that at least one destination reopened in Southeast Asia, but there are lots to work on from these authorities' preparation and planning. And plus, go ahead.
No, sorry. No, I was just about to say, because you were talking about the negatives, because it seems like it's still business as usual. So I read somewhere on Twitter that, the taxi syndicates are back at their old game again. So overcharging tourists. So, I mean, that's not the first thing that you would want to encounter when you return to Thailand after such a long time, right? So I don't know if this will be the way moving forward. Like, will Thailand be the same, Like, with the pandemic change anything at all with respect to practices and how they treat foreign tourists?
That's a good question. And obviously, at the moment, it's only Phuket. So, this reopening is going to be phased over a number of months. Maybe Samui might be next, hopefully later this month. And that moves forward, if this goes successfully, for vaccinated travelers to be throughout Thailand. If you go to Phuket right now, you have to stay for a minimum of 14 days, clear your PCR test if you want to travel onwards into Thailand. Although at the moment, Thailand is really struggling to contain the coronavirus, so it's a little bit difficult. But in terms of the airline sector, Michelle, you're looking at the moment of in-out flights. So I think there are flights from Middle Eastern carriers, Singapore Airlines, I think El Al from Israel, maybe some European carriers. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. As you can see, it's only Singapore Airlines that's, ASEAN carriers that flies into Thailand, because, I mean, only Singapore, I'm not sure about the full list of the low-risk countries, but definitely Singapore is one of them. Malaysia, for sure, and Philippines, Indonesia. I guess the bigger markets are definitely out there. So obviously airlines from those countries would not be able to, or it doesn't make commercial sense to launch flights into Phuket right now.
Right, right. So that was our #1 story this week, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was our #1 story this month.
Yeah. Are we moving on to the second one?
I think we are, but I think also we'll be talking about it as the months go on. We'll be talking about Thailand. We'll continue to, right?
Definitely, yeah. Lots to update on, actually. Yeah. So second story, Cook Island seeks tourism recovery. So travel bubbles seem very 2020 right now as we move into vaccinated travel era. But this one between New Zealand and Cook Island has regional significance in Australia and the South Pacific. I know, Gary, you wrote this story, right?
Yeah, so it's an interesting point that you make there. Travel bubbles do seem kind of 2020 before vaccine travel started again, because Phuket, obviously, of course, is welcoming vaccinated travelers. Whereas the travel bubble between Cook Islands and New Zealand is just a two-way travel bubble. It's two countries. You can travel between the two countries. It's quite an interesting timing because it actually launched in May this year between the two countries. Which is quite useful for New Zealand travelers who want a holiday, because obviously it's moving into winter in New Zealand. So it gives them a chance to take a summer holiday into the Cook Islands, it's relatively close. It's quite a popular destination ordinarily. I think the aim for this in particular travel bubble is to reboot and revive tourism in the Cook Islands. It's suffered really, really badly over the last year. Its economy is very, very reliant on tourism. And it hasn't had any COVID-19 cases, so it's relatively safe. But what the Cook Islands really, really wants, it wants two markets. It wants New Zealanders and it wants Australians to come. There are some negotiations about Australia to send their tourists there, but obviously at the moment, Australia is closed, apart from New Zealand, and they've had a bit of a resurgence of COVID-19 recently. So those negotiations may take a bit of a while, but at least there's some positive news. Cook Islanders, Cook Island tourism, travel companies and hotels, they're up and running again, which is great news.
Yeah, I think for Australia, it'll be interesting to find out if they'll still negotiate like on the country level, or will they be open to opening up states first? Because as we know right now, right, the outbreak is only in selected states like New South Wales, whereas other states in Australia are quite open. Even the New Zealand Trans-Tasman bubble is open to selected states in Australia. So maybe we'll see that for the Cook Islands travel bubble with Australia as well.
Entirely possible. I think Australia itself isn't really sure. I mean, one of the interesting things, as you said there, over recent months is we've seen that in terms of COVID control, the states have strong powers. They can close their borders to each other. So domestic travelers really suffered from that. Outbound travel ordinarily is a federal issue, but you're right. It may be that certain COVID-safe states get priority and preference to open their outbound markets before others. I guess we'll find that out. It's an interesting situation. Australia also has an election, a general election early next year, so a lot of these issues become very political as well.
Lady, do you know how small and medium businesses get support from government in Cook Islands? Because Phuket, the small business owners are saying they haven't got any support for reopening. So reopening didn't mean too much to them. So I don't know how Cook Islands is like.
I think Cook Islands is very small, so there are only a small number of operators anyway. From what I've been reading this week, they're looking at, they have quite strong bookings through to November, which you would probably expect because that's the New Zealand winter. As it comes to November, it's New Zealand and Australia's summer season, so they'll be traveling more between each other. But in terms of how it's actually benefited local businesses, well, there was a story in the Cook Islands news this week that they have a local market, a night market, which is very popular for its foods. And that has been reinvigorated by having tourists back. So there is some sign that it's actually not just benefiting the big hotel companies or the big tour operators, it is actually radiating into local businesses as well. New Zealanders tend to be quite adventurous travelers. They like to get out and about. They like to see the destinations that they're going to. So let's hope. I think we're still waiting more data on that, but it does look positive.
Yeah, that sounds more positive, actually. Yeah. Should we go over to the third story?
Let's go to story number 3.
Yay. So multilateral recognition of vaccine certificates. So this is super hot topic right now, and one that is being updated quite regularly. So on the report, Michelle, you highlighted the Philippines as an example of the challenges facing governments to verify and approve vaccine certificates, right? Do you have any updates on this? Or?
Yeah, actually, I do. When we published the article, now the rule in the Philippines has been updated. So even if you got the vaccines abroad, you can enjoy the shortened 7-day quarantine, provided that you come from so-called green countries, low risk wherein there's a low risk COVID-19 prevalence. And the vaccine you got must be approved under the emergency use listing by the WHO. So that's good news. But right now, it still won't apply to international tourists because they're not allowed to enter the Philippines. Even for me, I'm an overseas Filipino worker, but even if I come back, I won't be able to avail of this because Malaysia is not on the green list, unfortunately. So in this, right, I would also just like to highlight, right, that there are actually as I said, there are two international organizations that we have to watch out for. And we have to remember first that the primary organization in this is actually the World Health Organization, because they're the ones who should set the standard on what are the contents of the vaccine certificate itself, because that will ease the use. Like, even the formatting, like we take it for granted, but even the order, right, the date, the name, the full name, like name in the passport, etc., all the details like that, however minor they may be, it will be very important if first the WHO will be able to come up with a single format, and secondly, if to get the countries to accept this. And second, with respect to cross-border travel, we also need, in this case, the International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO. And I think I mentioned in the article, in the article, that they're now coming out with this visible digital seals. The only interesting, the interesting part about that is actually the VDS, the infrastructure is already existing, because this is what they use for e-passports. So I've read the proposal, the white paper by ICAO on this. So by proposing this, they're actually thinking of having the vaccine certificates just piggyback on the e-passport system. So the infrastructure is already there, and it will ease, the adoption by countries if they do decide to adopt this using that infrastructure already in place.
So I'm going to ask you a question here, Michelle, because items number 3 and number 4 are quite closely related. So Jayon introduced item number 3, which is multilateral recognition of vaccine certificates. And another story that you wrote for the report this month was about digital health passes and the stalemate that we have internationally of trying to get airlines and governments to agree about what they're going to use. So how are these two issues very closely related, and how can you separate them out, or can't you?
So here's the interesting part, right? So the health travel passes, even IATA right now, they're only talking about PCR test results. So, for example, Singapore has accepted the use of IATA travel pass into their country, but only for pre-departure COVID-19 tests, which means that, vaccine certificates are still not part of the infrastructure. So there still remains a question of, okay, right now, there's not even a single health travel pass being accepted by states. And second question will be, even if there's one health travel pass that will be accepted, will it only be accepted for PCR test results, or will they also use this for vaccine certificates? So those are the questions that until now we still don't know the answers to. And as you can see, from an airline perspective, it is frustrating because now we are moving on, we're not just talking about PCR test results here, because people are actually getting vaccinated. And different countries, and sometimes even within the local governments within a country like the Philippines, they have their own format of vaccine certificates. So you will have the situation wherein, countries like the Philippines, they don't even have a single format for vaccine certificates. So how will that facilitate travel? It's insane.
Yeah,
the
it's so
complexity of the
confusing.
issue.
Yeah.
We have a WhatsApp group between the three of us, and you sent me scrambling the other day because you mentioned, because we have the AstraZeneca vaccine here. We both get our second vaccines this week. But you concerned me the other day because you mentioned the EU recognition of AstraZeneca vaccines is it depends on where the actual vaccine was manufactured. That's right.
Yeah, so that is a real issue. And I think even the Malaysian government, since the Malaysian government was asked an opinion about this, I think they also raised it. I'm not sure if you saw the news articles after that. So they're actually clarifying this with the EU regulators, because that could, it's now happening, right? So even if you say, okay, this will be should be accredited by an international body, but we didn't know that this complication, like where the vaccine itself is manufactured, matters. So now I think that issue is now surfacing as well.
So this will interest you.
AstraZeneca.
This will interest you, Jen. I went and had a look at the batch numbers for our vaccines, and mine came from South Korea.
Really? AstraZeneca? Yeah. Is it?
I don't know if it's manufactured in South Korea. That's what it says on the batch.
I think we do. But the funny story, we don't have enough supply. But we keep exporting. So I don't know. Yeah, I think we are producing, but we don't have enough supply within our country. Very interesting. It's all very...
In your country, which vaccines are being used?
AstraZeneca the most.
Is the most, yeah.
Yeah, Pfizer was only for people over 75. We didn't have enough Pfizer. So mostly AstraZeneca and little bit Johnson & Johnson, but we don't have even enough AstraZeneca at the moment. But definitely we are producing. Not for us, for you guys.
Well, thank you. So that's going to lead us on to our next question, right?
Next issue would be, yeah. So speaking of South Korea, one of the features in our issue last month was South Koreans heading to Europe for the summer. So while most Asian outbound markets remain closed, as we know, South Koreans are now enviously jetting off for summer vacations and booking ahead even for Lunar New Year next year. So what are the reasons behind this, Jaehyun, behind this summer travel surge, and where are the travelers heading off to?
Pent-up desire to travel. In 2019 alone, more than half of South Korean population traveled abroad. So we're actually very, very passionate about traveling abroad. So more than half of the population, that's an amazing number. So this whole population have been having this pent-up desire, and these European countries allowing us to visit their countries without any quarantines. So we actually started flying. Korean Air just flew to Prague 2 days ago, June 30th, 3 days ago. And especially Prague, the Czech Republic doesn't require any documents from South Koreans. So no confusion for a vaccine certificate. We don't need a vaccine proof, no PCR results, no quarantine. So Koreans are flying to Prague. And other popular destinations are Switzerland, France, Spain, and Italy. And traditionally, Koreans travel more to France, but somehow this year they're going to more to Switzerland. And I'm guessing that's because of fresh air and open air, because Switzerland tour package usually has mountain walking and things, compared to France tour packages has, Paris, more city trips. And people are booking to Guam, Hawaii, and Saipan. Actually, South Korea just signed off their first travel bubble agreement with Saipan. So Jeju Air start flying on July 10th, next week, right? And Korean Air start flying July 24th to Saipan. But Saipan a bit more complicated. They require us to have a vaccination certificate and PCR test. But Saipan will pay all the PCR tests for tourists once we arrive in Saipan. So I think that's kind of more attractive than going to Phuket, because Phuket we have to pay PCR, that's not cheap, right? But Saipan pays all the PCR tests. So people
and is that just Koreans that can go to Saipan, or is there other nations as well?
I don't know about other nations, but we have this two-way travel bubble agreement. They just signed up July 1st, I think, just recently. So
are you going?
I wish. I wish. It's only 4.5 hours away from Incheon to Saipan. It's really close. Yeah. Again, this population could be going to Southeast Asia, but they're going to Saipan.
Is there any demographic? What are the demographics those who are traveling out now to Europe, to Saipan?
I don't have exact numbers, but lots of honeymooners going to Saipan, because they're traditionally popular for honeymooners anyways. And I heard that women in 40s are booking more than other demographic at the moment, women in 40s in Korea.
What about families? Is it school holidays there?
Yeah, from July, actually, yeah, it is school holiday, but travel agencies said family will book their trips soon, but they haven't been a big, actually, segment booked. But they said that women in 40 somehow booked the most so far.
Single for women? No.
They didn't announce that yet, but possible, because people are getting married later and people are not getting married at all, you know, more population in Korea and women in 40s have money. And yeah, so that's an interesting population actually. Wow. And Koreans are also booking ahead for their Lunar New Year 2022 February, because some people are worried there might not be seats at all in February during Lunar New Year, so they're anxious. So they're booking already but interestingly for Lunar New Year holiday, they're booking more for Southeast Asia, like Philippines and Vietnam, Da Nang, Phuket, Boracay, and Cebu. So they're hoping we can travel to Southeast Asia in February. I'm sure we can, right?
But actually, I was in Boracay during one of the Lunar New Years, and you're right. There's a lot of Koreans there. Unusually, like there are more Koreans than Filipinos when I went there. I think like 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Even Cebu, I was in Cebu like 5 years ago. There are too many Koreans. It was not very exciting for me. And same as Da Nang. I brought my mom to Da Nang 3 years ago. She was so disappointed. We woke up in the morning, we went to hotel breakfast. It was 100% Korean tourists. She's like, what's this? I didn't fly all the way for this. So, yeah.
There was another thing that you were telling us that was quite interesting, John, and that's how people are buying. A lot of people buy from TV shows, right?
Yeah, home shopping channel. So people are buying ahead through home shopping channel. It's very popular, actually, hobby and leisure time for Koreans. And this home shopping channel provides you very simpler picture of package programs. So you don't have to surfing online. So people like to save time. Again, women in 40s and 50s especially prefer this home shopping channel because they give you deals. They show you like exact packages. So it's kind of easier. And once you buy these packages, you can use it for 1 year. So you don't have to fly now. And you can just book and you can just kind of hope for next year's travel. You can just feel happy about it. So I think that kind of helps their kind of depression too during COVID time. And you can transfer this to other person as well. So you can buy and give somebody for gifts. And usually 100% refund guaranteed. So people feel comfortable buying these packages.
Okay, I know we have to move, but I have a last question. Is this the COVID-19 phenomenon, or has this always been the way to book for tour packages in Korea?
That's a great question. Actually, always has been very popular. Yeah, not only for COVID.
Have you booked it? Have you booked through the TV?
No. I'm still young to surf online. But I like to compare prices and things by myself, right? I don't want other people to design my travel. But because of COVID, maybe people are less confident to book themselves because each destination has different restrictions. It's kind of complicated, like we mentioned earlier, the vaccination proof, how do I prepare? And these travel agents do the work for you. So I think people prefer it now more than before.
Wow. But at least, I mean, it's great that every kind of tourism we're talking about most in the region at the moment, Phuket, Cook Islands, it's about inbound tourism. It's about trying to get travelers to come to the country. But South Korea is quite different. People are actually taking holidays overseas.
That's true.
Yeah. So quite vibrant and lively for our travel industry. But we have the same problem. The small business owners in tourism industry still complaining it doesn't really come to us. And they also haven't got much support from government. So all these big travel agencies are taking advantage of the situation, but not the small agents.
Right. Well, but at least it's a positive story.
Yeah, definitely. Any other questions?
No, I think we can move on.
Okay, so the last story already. Okay, time flies, right? So world highest hotel returns to Shanghai. And finally, a light-hearted story. The new J Hotel on the upper floors of Shanghai Tower, the world's second tallest building has applied to the Guinness Book of Records to be officially announced the world's highest hotel. That's actually exciting story. Gary, you wrote this one, right?
Yeah, it is an exciting story, and it's a very modern China story as well. So this new hotel is in the area of Pudong, Shanghai, which is the new financial district. They have 3 huge towers. And over the last 15, 20 years, each one of those towers has had the world's tallest hotel. So when I moved to Shanghai in 2004, I think it was just about then or just after, they had the Grand Hyatt in the Jinmao Tower. That was the highest hotel in the world. A little bit later in the next door tower, which is the Shanghai World Financial Center, Park Hyatt opened there, and that was the world's highest hotel for a while. Then it moved to Hong Kong. Hong Kong Ritz-Carlton, I think, was the highest hotel for a while. And more recently, since 2018, the highest hotel in the world has been in Dubai. But now it's gone back to Shanghai. Shanghai's reclaimed it. So the new J Hotel is in the Shanghai Tower, which is the world's second tallest building. It's on the upper floors. I think the lobby is 474 meters high. So it's almost half a kilometer in the sky. It's incredibly high. And there's a restaurant, I think it's the 120th floor. There's a restaurant with something like 573 meters up. So it's ridiculously high. But the views over Shanghai, which is a very, very picturesque setting with the river and the city itself, beautiful views. But the interesting thing about this one, as opposed to when Shanghai previously held the world's highest hotel record, those were international hotel companies. Well, they were both Hyatt hotels. This time it's J Hotel, which is owned by Jinjiang, which is China's own state hotel company. And J Hotel is their new luxury hotel brand. So they're using this hotel as a bit of showcase, and hopefully they aim to sign management contracts around the world, most likely in Sky Tower buildings, to take this J Hotel concept around the world. So whereas before it used to be hotel groups were coming from around the world into China, in future it may be going the other way.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, no, I always cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, yeah, I was just wondering, like, for people who like to collect loyalty points, right? Because that's where you have these big hotel groups like Accor, etc. Since Jinjiang or J Hotel is, as you said, like I'm assuming this first project, like, would it be attractive enough for people who like to collect the points, etc., like that, to book in this hotel?
Well, Jinjiang itself has thousands of hotels. It is actually one of the world's biggest hotel companies, and it has several different brands. But this is the introduction of its new sort of super luxury, high-profile brand. But I don't exactly know how they will tailor their reward system. That I don't know about yet. But they do have one, and yeah, obviously, as they go international, they'll probably ramp that up as well.
Oh, and they are targeting Chinese businessmen mainly.
A mixture. I mean, it is ultra luxury, so definitely wealth. I mean, China has an incredible amount of wealthy people, and it has the world's most billionaires. It has very rich families. There's a lot of wealth generated in Shanghai. It's a New York type city. You know, it generates a lot of wealth. So luxury travelers of all sorts. Business, yes, but I think more the actual leisure side will be the primary focus. And from across Asia as well, you get rich people. But internationally, I mean, I think because it's such a statement hotel, and it's starting to get published in all the different magazines around the world. So, you know, it has its own allure, I think. And it's quite interesting, I think, for international travelers that this is actually a Chinese hotel brand, as opposed to going to Shanghai and staying in a Marriott or in a Hyatt hotel.
I can imagine, I can imagine influencer going for taking pictures and, you know, posts.
It's very influencer friendly. If you look online, I mean, there's a lot of very Chinese themed elements. A lot of the restaurants are Asian style restaurants, beautifully designed. I mean, they really haven't spared any money in terms of investment, in terms of design. It is very, very WeChat friendly and very, very Insta friendly for sure.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, even the lobby, like the receptionist counter is made of glass. Like, it's like, wow.
Yeah, it's definitely designed for sharing, definitely.
Do you know anything about like their design based on like Feng Shui or no? Just curious.
Yeah, of course they will. It will be. I mean, all hotels there are, and obviously it overlooks the river, so the water's right in front of it. The hills are right behind. So it does have all of those elements. But internally, yes. I mean, the spa is absolutely stunning. And that is very much feng shui in terms of its principles. So yeah, that will definitely be taken care of. All luxury hotels in China are very strong on that.
It attracts out Korean people to actually tourists, like luxury.
How much is it to stay there per night?
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen the rates, but I imagine that there'll be Park Hyatt style rates. They will be high.
Okay, something that I cannot afford.
Sounds really interesting.
No. You need to get a press trip. You need to get press trips there. Go and check it out.
It was kind of nice story to end.
Yeah, so that's 6 of our stories. We actually produced 15, right?
Yeah.
So.
And next month we'll be reducing it to 12. Is that correct?
Next month we're going to do 12, yeah, because 15 was quite a lot, and so the report was quite long this month. But yeah, 12. We'll pick the 12 best stories from across Asia Pacific during July. Yeah, we're just starting the month. I'm sure we'll be talking about Phuket and Samui maybe, but who knows what else will happen. It's one of those interesting times at the moment, isn't it? So much gets talked about. There are so many announcements, so many developments, but not much travel yet, unless you're South Korean.
Yeah, I might do this next month in Prague, who knows, right?
We'll be very jealous if you do.
Something to watch out.
Yeah.
All right, then I guess thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. Any questions that you have, please follow us on LinkedIn and you can direct our questions there, or the email, the Asia, Gary, is there an email?
The website is www.asiatravelreset.com. That's where you can find the report and that's where you can subscribe.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.